You've heard me talk about press release stacking a lot. So some general concepts, what these are is a bunch of press releases that have one press release that we call a base press release, or you could call it a foundational press release, and then subsequent releases link back to other releases. I know that sounds a little bit weird. It'll make more sense here in a minute when we look at some diagrams, because it's not always the same type of release that it links to. The key here is to use thematic stacks. So it could either be all about a location, it could be all about a service in that location, it could be all about a product, that sort of thing. But try and keep your stacks thematically similar. The base release that you start with should only have one link in it, and that should go back to something that's relevant to the stack theme. Again, that sounds really kind of high level, and the reason for that is because as we apply these concepts, then we're going to link back to different things. So again, we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. And then the stack releases, all they should link to is the target release. Again, we'll talk about what that target release is in a minute. And then you can optionally, if you want to, and I haven't seen any downside to this, you can use a second link in stack releases that points to the actual ID page. I would not point it to any content or anything like that, any socials or anything along those lines. But if you wanted to link to an ID page for that, you could experiment with like an iframe farm page or something like that. You can play around with that as well. I haven't tried that, but I do know that linking to an ID page is not harmful in any way. Some more concepts here. Don't be afraid to run multiple stacks at a time for a given client. In fact, I recommend it, and we'll talk about that down the road. If you have a brand that's kind of Google is confused about the entity, or you need to enhance the brand in some way, then you can use what I call a pure branding stack, which is just focused on the brand itself. You can kind of do a hybrid model too by making sure that stacks that you build also focus on branding as well, so that if you don't need the pure branding stack, then do it that way. That's actually the way I would recommend it. Always use your stacks for keywords or services or locations or whatever, and then layer the branding aspect of it on top of that as part of your your instructions in the release, or kind of your keywords that you choose. You're using keywords with brand, that sort of thing. That's going to give you some good double dipping type of results there. The number of releases that you use per stack, I know that's a common question. It really depends on the exact structure that you're using, as well as what you're promoting and who that client is. The main thing to really think of is making sure you pick carefully what release pickups that you use as part of your stacks. A lot of people are just going to use the ones here on pressadvantage.com because we control it, so we can make sure that you get all of the features, all the bells and whistles that we offer as part of that. But a lot of people will use like a Yahoo pickup or something like that to kind of piggyback on to some of that extra link authority there. If you do that, and you don't know for sure that it's something that's going to stick. So Yahoo's pretty safe, right? MSN, pretty safe. But if you link to other pickups, use a link redirect so that you can redirect that if that happens to go down. We have had cases where a network has fallen off of our radar, or for example, when we separated ways with Digital Journal because of their SEO practices. If you had those links as part of your foundation, those would have gone away. So you'd want to be able to redirect those if as best you can. And then as much as you can use our automation to simplify the stacking, it can get really fiddly if you don't. And so I always encourage you to use our automation heavily for this.